Rain lashed against the palace walls, a symphony of thunder echoing through the marble halls. Servants hurried through the corridors, their footsteps soft, their heads bowed. No one dared draw the attention of the royal family on a night like this. Among them moved Lyran, a quiet Omega servant with eyes the color of dusk. His hands trembled slightly as he carried a tray of wine toward the grand hall. He had served in the palace since childhood, invisible, obedient, and careful to stay unnoticed by the alphas who ruled these halls like gods. But fate, cruel and curious, had other plans that night. A gust of wind slammed the tall windows open, scattering candles and sending the hallway into darkness. Lyran bent to pick up the fallen goblet, and when he rose he felt it. Presence. A shadow stood at the far end of the corridor, cloaked in black. Golden eyes gleamed in the dark, sharp, powerful, and inhumanly calm. Prince Kael, the heir of the Northern Moon, the alpha whose name alone made warriors kneel. He was rumored to be heartless, untouched by affection, a ruler born only for blood and power. Lyran froze, clutching the tray to his chest. "Why, Your Highness?" he stammered, bowing low. The prince said nothing. His gaze lingered, too long, too deep. There was something unreadable in his eyes, something primal. When he finally stepped closer, Lyran felt the air grow heavy. The scent of alpha dominance rolled through the corridor, suffocating and intoxicating at once. "You're trembling?" Kael said softly, his voice low as thunder. "Are you afraid of me?" Lyran's heart raced. "And no, Your Highness." A faint smirk curved Kael's lips. "You should be." Lightning flashed, illuminating them for a brief, electric moment. Lyran saw the loneliness behind the prince's mask, a fleeting glimpse of the man beneath the crown. And Kael saw something he could not explain. A pull, ancient and forbidden, that stirred his wolf within. The air between them cracked like stormlight. Neither spoke, neither moved, but something had already changed. And as the thunder rolled over the palace, destiny whispered its first secret. The servant and the prince would soon share a sin the kingdom could never forgive. The palace glowed crimson beneath the rise of the blood moon, its light washing over marble towers like spilled wine. Every century, this night marked the renewal of the royal pact between the moon goddess and the alpha bloodline. A night of power, prayer, and temptation. The halls shimmered with gold and silk. Alphas from noble houses gathered in their ceremonial armor, while Omegas served quietly from the shadows. Lyran, dressed in simple white robes, moved among them with a calm he didn't feel. His heart pounded too fast. The air itself was strange tonight, heavy, charged, alive. He could feel it crawling beneath his skin. The pull. The blood moon's call that awakened the instincts buried deep in every alpha and omega. When the head steward called his name, Lyran nearly dropped the tray in his hands. "You've been chosen to attend to His Highness Prince Kael. Alone." The words struck like lightning. No Omega served the prince privately, ever. But defying a royal command meant punishment beyond imagining. So Lyran bowed his head. "Yes, my lord." He followed the guard through silent corridors, the music of the festival fading behind him. The moment the doors closed, all he could hear was his own breath and the steady rhythm of another's heartbeat. Prince Kael stood by the window, silver hair gleaming in the blood-red light. His ceremonial armor lay discarded, his shirt half open. He didn't look like a prince. He looked like a storm barely contained. "Pour the wine," Kael said, his tone sharp but quiet. Lyran obeyed. His fingers brushed the glass, and that was when it happened. Their scents collided. Sweet Omega pheromones met the alpha's dominance like fire to dry leaves. The air thickened, unbreathable. Lyran tried to step back, but his knees weakened. His body trembled with instincts he'd buried all his life. Kael's hand caught his wrist firm, commanding. "Don't move." "Why, Your Highness, I shouldn't." Kael's eyes darkened, his wolf flickering through the golden irises. "Then why can't you look away?" The silence between them burned hotter than the moon outside. Lyran's heart screamed for distance, but his soul leaned closer. When Kael's breath touched his neck, A shiver ran through his entire body. It was wrong. It was forbidden. But when Kale's lips brushed against his skin, Lyran's resistance shattered. The Blood Moon watched as the Alpha claimed what the laws forbade, and the servant who was never meant to be touched became the one the prince could never forget. The world had narrowed to heat and breath. The moon bled red through the palace windows, painting their skin in shades of sin. Lyran's hands trembled as Kale's breath ghosted against his throat. Every instinct screamed at him to pull away, but his body betrayed him, moving closer to the Alpha who should have been untouchable. "Tell me to stop," Kale whispered, voice thick with restraint. Lyran's lips parted, but no sound came out. His heart thundered, his scent filling the air like blooming jasmine. The pull between them was no longer something human. It was ancient, wild, written in their blood. Kale's control shattered. In one desperate breath, his fangs sank into Lyran's neck. The mark seared like fire, pain and pleasure entwined. Lyran gasped, his fingers clutching Kale's shoulders as the world blurred into light. The bond was forged, a claim no decree could erase, a link that tied their souls even as fate tore them apart. When the haze faded, Kale's breath came ragged. He stared at the mark glowing faintly against Lyran's pale skin. His mark. The realization hit like a blade. "No," he murmured, stepping back as if from a crime. "This should never have happened." Lyran blinked through tears, confusion flickering in his gaze. "Your Highness, forget this night." His tone was steel, but his eyes betrayed him, burning with the ache of something he refused to name. "Forget me." He turned away before Lyran could speak, his hands shaking. Outside, the blood moon sank behind the horizon, leaving only the pale dawn, and the silence of something broken beyond repair. Lyran fell to his knees, fingers brushing the tender mark on his neck. It pulsed softly, matching the rhythm of another heartbeat, his Alpha's. He didn't know that the mark wasn't just a bond. It was a fate, one that would soon awaken within him a secret even the gods feared. The blood moon had faded, but its shadow lingered. Days passed, then weeks, each one colder, quieter, heavier. Lyran worked as though nothing had happened, moving through the palace halls like a ghost. The other servants didn't notice how pale he'd grown, or how his hands trembled whenever someone mentioned the prince's name. He spoke to no one, smiled at nothing. But the silence inside him began to stir. It started with the nausea, faint at first, then unbearable. The scent of food turned his stomach. His body felt different, fragile, alive in ways it shouldn't be. And when he finally pressed a trembling hand to his abdomen one morning, his breath caught. There, beneath his palm, a warmth pulsed softly. It shouldn't have been possible. An Omega like him, touched by the royal air, the mark still faint on his neck, and now this. Lyran sank to the floor, his body shaking. He covered his mouth to muffle the sob that tore free. "No, please no. If anyone found out, he would be executed." The prince, stripped of his birthright. The law was clear. No royal Alpha could bond or breed with an Omega of servant blood. But life had already chosen its path. Each day, the small changes grew harder to hide. The weakness in his knees, the way his scent deepened, the faint glow of the mark when moonlight touched it. His friends began to ask questions. He smiled, lied, and prayed no one would see through the cracks. At night, he would curl up beneath the thin blanket in his small servant's quarters, whispering to the life inside him. "I'll keep you safe," he murmured, voice trembling, "even if it costs me everything." Meanwhile, in the high tower, Prince Kale dreamed of the Omega he'd marked, dreams filled with phantom warmth, the sound of a heartbeat that wasn't his own. He tried to bury it under duty, under the cold weight of the crown. But some bonds are carved into the soul. And though they lived worlds apart, Kale's wolf stirred restlessly, sensing something it could not understand. The connection still lived. And deep within Lyran, the forbidden air of the Alpha Prince began to grow. A secret that would soon shake the entire kingdom. The palace gardens had always been Lyran's sanctuary, a place where he could breathe without fear. But that morning, the scent of roses and rain turned dizzying. His vision blurred. A sharp pain seized his stomach, and before he could call for help, the world tilted and went dark. When he woke, the murmurs had already begun. They found him fainted by the fountain. And Omega, pale as snow, maybe he's sick. Sick? Or hiding something? The whispers slithered through the palace like smoke. By the time Lyran returned to his quarters, every servant's glance carried suspicion. They didn't dare speak openly, but curiosity gleamed in their eyes. In the upper halls, Queen Alara stood by her window, watching the servants scatter below. Her gaze was sharp, calculating, a queen who missed nothing. "The prince has been restless since the blood moon," she murmured to her lady-in-waiting. "And now an Omega faints in the gardens. Find out who he is." The order was quiet but deadly. Lyran's world began to crumble. He tried to work, to blend back into the rhythm of servitude, but the palace no longer felt safe. Every corridor seemed to whisper his secret. That evening, his closest friend, Tyrion, cornered him behind the kitchen storeroom. Tyrion's eyes were wide with fear. "Lyran, the queen's men are asking about you. They said the prince's scent was found on your robe that night." Lyran's heart stopped. "Tyrion, please, don't tell anyone." "I won't. But you can't stay here. If they find out what you're hiding, they'll—" Tyrion's voice cracked, unable to finish. Lyran pressed a hand over his stomach, feeling the faint flutter beneath his ribs, the heartbeat that wasn't his own. "Where would I go? There's nowhere safe beyond these walls." Tyrion grasped his shoulders. "Then go before the walls close in." Outside, bells tolled softly for the evening prayer. Inside, the queen's spies moved like shadows, and somewhere in the high tower, Prince Kael's wolf stirred again. Restless, uneasy, sensing danger it could not name. And as night fell over the palace, the whispers grew louder, until they reached the throne room itself. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the royal chambers. The guards outside didn't dare move. No one entered when Prince Kael was angry, not even the bravest of alphas. But tonight's fury was different. It wasn't born of power or pride. It was born of fear. Kael stood by the torn curtains, chest heaving, his hands trembling as he stared at the parchment before him. The report that carried the one truth he could never face. The Omega servant Lyran is with child. His mark, his scent, his sin. The world tilted around him. He could hear the faint echo of Lyran's voice in his memory, soft, trembling, whispering his name beneath the blood moon. He had told him to forget, to pretend it never happened. And yet, fate had not obeyed. Kael's wolf roared inside him, a primal cry that shattered what little control he had left. The instinct to protect surged through every vein. Fierce, uncontrollable, undeniable. He slammed his fist into the wall, cracking the marble. "Mine!" he growled, voice breaking. "He's mine." But another voice answered, colder, crueler. The king's voice. "That creature has broken sacred law. If the rumors are true, the Omega and the child will be executed. The bloodline must remain pure." Kael turned, his golden eyes flaring. "You'll kill an innocent? You broke the vow of the crown," the king hissed. "You've tainted the royal line. You've doomed us all." Kael's jaw clenched until it hurt. The monster in him, the alpha, howled to defy his father, to run, to claim and protect the fragile life that bore his scent. But the crown pressed down like iron, reminding him what he was bound to serve. He tried to speak, to reason, but all that came out was a strangled whisper. "He's carrying my child." The king's expression darkened. "Then you will watch as I erase your mistake." The words tore something out of Kael. He staggered back, breath uneven. His wolf raged, fighting for dominance. Every instinct screamed to go to Lyran, to shield him from the world, even if it meant destroying the kingdom itself. By the time the guards reached Lyran's quarters that night, Kael had already broken free. The halls echoed with shouts, the scent of his fury filling the air. And as the prince disappeared into the storm, his eyes blazed not with guilt, but with the wrath of an alpha who had just realized what it meant to love. The kingdom demanded blood, but Kale's heart demanded war. The royal decree rang through the palace like thunder. The Omega who carries the prince's blood is to be found and executed before the next moonrise. Every soldier in the kingdom bowed their heads to the order. None dared question it. The king's wrath was absolute. His honor wounded. His crown stained by the forbidden bond between his son and a servant. In the lower halls, Lyran could hear the chaos outside. Boots pounding, doors slamming, voices shouting his name. His hands clutched his belly as fear clawed through him. He'd known this day would come. He just hadn't expected Kale to come for him first. When the door burst open, he flinched. But it wasn't the king's guards. It was him, the prince, his alpha. Kale's cloak was torn, his eyes wild, his voice low and urgent. "They're coming for you. We have to leave. Now." Lyran shook his head, tears streaking his cheeks. "If they catch you helping me, I don't care." Kale's hand found his, firm and trembling. "I won't lose you. Not again." He wrapped Lyran in a dark cloak, pulling the hood over his face. Outside, the torches burned bright as soldiers combed the gardens. Every second was borrowed time. They slipped through hidden corridors Kale had known since childhood. Paths once meant for kings, now used by fugitives. Lyran's steps faltered. His body was fragile, every breath heavy. But Kale never let go. From the tower above, Queen Alara watched the shadows move through the mist. Her lips parted in shock, and then, perhaps, something like sorrow. "He's defying the crown for him." Down below, thunder rolled as the palace gates came into view. The guards were everywhere. Kale drew his sword, his scent flaring, his wolf rising. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The first soldier lunged. Kale's blade struck like lightning. He moved with the fury of a beast unchained, fighting not for honor or power, but for love. When the final guard fell, Kale grasped Lyran's hand once more. "Run." They fled into the storm, the world around them collapsing into chaos. Alarms ringing, arrows slicing through rain. Behind them, the king's voice bellowed from the tower. "Kale, you betray your blood for a servant." Kale didn't turn back. His cloak billowed in the wind as he pulled Lyran toward the forest beyond the palace walls. "I betray a crown," he shouted into the storm. "But I will never betray my mate." Lightning split the sky. The gates burst open, and the prince and the Omega disappeared into the darkness. Hunted by the crown, bound by love, and forever changed by the choice that defied a kingdom. The forest welcomed them with silence. Ancient, endless, and watchful. For days, Kale and Lyran moved through the shadows, guided only by moonlight and instinct. Every sound made Kale's hand reach for his blade. Every rustle made Lyran cling closer. When at last they found the ruins, a half-forgotten shrine of stone and moss, Kale stopped. "We'll rest here," he said softly. "No one will find us." The shrine stood in a clearing where moonlight spilled like silver. The air carried a strange hum, old magic, untouched by time. Lyran could feel it in his bones, gentle and protective, like the forest itself had chosen to keep their secret. The days turned to weeks. Lyran's body changed, his belly rounding softly beneath the loose fabric of his tunic, his steps slower, his smile quieter. Kale learned to build fires, to catch food, to listen to the rhythm of another's breathing at night. He had been trained all his life to command, to rule, to conquer. But here, in exile, he learned something else. He learned to care. At dawn, he would wake before Lyran and sit beside him, fingers brushing the faint mark on his neck. Sometimes, he would press his forehead against Lyran's skin and whisper to the unborn child, his voice low and reverent. "You're safe now," he would murmur. "I promise. I'll protect you both." Lyran would laugh softly, half asleep. "You're terrible at keeping promises, my prince." Kale smiled faintly. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving this one true." For a while they had peace. The scent of wildflowers filled the air. Lyran's laughter returned, gentle as spring rain. Kale began to dream of a life beyond thrones and crowns. a life where love was not a sin. But peace in their world was a fragile thing. At night, Kale sometimes felt eyes watching from the trees, distant, patient, predatory. He would wake to the sound of leaves shifting, his wolf on edge. The air carried whispers of pursuit, the faint metallic scent of steel. One night, as the wind howled through the forest, Lyran stirred from sleep. Kale, something's out there. He rose instantly, sword in hand, eyes burning gold. The old magic in the clearing flickered, as if warning them. The forest had kept them safe, but the world beyond hadn't forgotten. The king's men were still hunting, and shadows were moving closer with every moonrise. Their love had bloomed in hiding, tender, defiant, and pure. But the sanctuary that had once sheltered them was beginning to tremble. The forest was alive with whispers of old magic when the seer arrived. She appeared at the edge of their clearing, cloaked in midnight blue, eyes shimmering with knowledge beyond time. Kale instinctively stepped in front of Lyran, wolf instincts flaring. "I am no threat," the woman said softly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "I have come to speak of the life you carry." Lyran's hands instinctively rested on his rounded belly. Fear and wonder warred in his chest. Kale's gaze narrowed, golden eyes scanning every shadow, every movement. "The child you bear is special," the seer continued. "Not just a prince or an omega. This child carries the power to unite the alphas and omegas, a power the throne has long feared." Kale's hand froze on Lyran's shoulder. "Unite?" he repeated, disbelief and hope mingling in his voice. "Yes," the seer said, her gaze turning gentle but firm. "Your love, your bond, has awakened this prophecy. The world may try to destroy it, but destiny cannot be denied." Lyran's breath caught. "You mean, this child can change everything?" "Everything," the seer confirmed. "Your love was never meant to be secret. It was always meant to shape the future." Kale's fingers tightened around Lyran's, the heat of his grasp grounding him. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a world where they were not fugitives, where their love was not a sin. "We'll protect them," Kale whispered, voice low but resolute. "No army, no king, no law will take what is ours." The seer nodded, a faint smile playing at her lips. "The path will not be easy. Shadows will come. The throne will strike. But love is the strongest magic there is." As she faded into the forest mist, Lyran felt something stir within him. Hope, fierce and undeniable. Their love, once forbidden and fragile, had become destiny. And the child growing inside him was more than a secret heir. It was the key to a future where alphas and omegas could stand together. Not as enemies, not as rulers and servants, but as equals. Kale lowered his forehead to Lyran's, the storm of his emotions finally quieting into calm. "We are going to change the world," he promised. Lyran smiled through tears. Together, and under the silver glow of the moon, their hearts beat as one. A love forbidden, a child prophesied, and a destiny that could not be broken. The forest was quiet, unnaturally so. Kale and Lyran had grown comfortable in their hidden sanctuary, or at least they had allowed themselves to believe it. But comfort is a fragile illusion. It began with a rustle at the edge of the clearing, subtle, almost polite. Kale's golden eyes snapped toward it, his wolf growling low in his chest. Lyran froze beside him, hands instinctively clutching his belly. "Stay behind me," Kale whispered, voice as sharp as steel. They emerged from the shadows not as an enemy army, but as one of their own. A trusted ally from the palace, someone Kale had believed loyal. His smile was cold, eyes glinting with betrayal. "I'm sorry, Kale," the man said, voice deceptively calm. "But the king wants the Omega, and he wants the child." Before Kale could react, horns of alarm echoed through the trees. Soldiers poured into the clearing like a flood, steel glinting in the moonlight. The sanctuary that had sheltered them became a battlefield. Kale's wolf rose primal and feral. His hands became claws, his senses sharpened to every movement. He moved with the strength of a storm, a whirlwind of gold and black fury. Every strike was precise, every growl a promise. No one would touch Lyran, but even the strongest alpha has limits. Amid the chaos, Kale saw Lyran crouched behind a fallen pillar, terrified, his small body trembling. He lunged toward him, and in that heartbeat, a soldier's chain wrapped around Kale's wrist. "No!" Kale roared, tearing at the bonds. But more soldiers came, overwhelming even his wolf-driven strength. He fought like a tempest, but one by one, they forced him down. Lyran's hands reached for him, screaming his name, but Kale was dragged away. His golden eyes locked on the Omega he had sworn to protect. "I'm coming back for you," he shouted, voice breaking with rage and desperation. Lyran's tears fell freely, mingling with the cold rain. His body shook, not from fear alone, but from the helplessness of watching the Alpha who had vowed to protect him captured before his very eyes. The forest fell silent again, save for the distant sound of soldiers dragging Kale toward the palace. The sanctuary was no longer safe, the prophecy hanging over them like a storm cloud, a future uncertain, a love tested by fire. And as the moon cast its pale light over Lyran, he realized their fight had only just begun. Smoke curled through the palace corridors, black and choking. Flames licked the stone walls, devouring banners, tapestries, and memories of centuries. The rebellion had begun in earnest. Soldiers loyal to the crown clashed with those who followed Kale's defiance. Somewhere in the chaos, Lyran lay on a tattered mattress in a hidden chamber. His body trembled violently, sweat soaking his hair, hands clutching the prince's crest. A small token he had stolen before Kale was captured. It was all the comfort he had left. "Please, survive, Kale," he whispered between shudders. "Please, see this child." The first contractions hit like waves of fire, his belly tightening as the child within demanded to enter the world. Each cry, each groan, echoed against the roar of battle outside, mingling with the screams of soldiers and the clash of steel. Lyran gritted his teeth, refusing to let fear take him. His love for Kale, for the unborn child, burned hotter than any flame. He focused on the crest in his hands, on the warmth it radiated, imagining Kale's golden eyes, his fierce protective presence. Hours passed like eternities. Sweat, blood, and tears mixed on his skin. The world outside could burn, the child had to survive. They had to survive. Finally, with one last, shuddering effort, a cry pierced the smoke-filled chamber. A newborn, wailing and alive, lay in Lyran's trembling arms. He pressed the baby to his chest, tears blinding him, whispering promises only a parent could make. "You are safe. You will be loved. I will protect you until the end of the world." From the shattered window, a shadow fell. A familiar figure stumbling through the smoke, golden eyes blazing with fury and relief. Kale had returned, wounded but alive, fighting through the chaos to reach them. Lyran's lips parted in a sob, holding the child up. Kale's hand shook as he reached out, cradling both Lyran and the newborn in his arms. You made it," Kale whispered, voice hoarse. Both. Outside, the palace continued to burn, but inside the hidden chamber, a new life, their child, marked the beginning of hope. The heir of forbidden love, prophesied and protected, rested safely in their embrace. For the first time, Kale allowed himself to collapse fully, his beast finally calm, his heart overflowing with a love so fierce it could conquer kingdoms. And as the flames consumed the old world, a new one began, born from love, sacrifice, and the courage of two hearts that refused to surrender. The battlefield outside the palace had fallen silent. Smoke still curled into the sky, and the faint glow of fire painted the walls crimson. But inside the hidden chamber, peace, fragile and precious, had returned. Kale stumbled through the doorway, blood streaking his armor, breath ragged, eyes blazing gold. In his arms, their child lay swaddled in a soft cloth, tiny fists curled, eyes closed. The newborn's soft cries echoed against the charred stones, a song of life rising from the ashes of destruction. Lyran, pale and exhausted but alive, pressed close to Kael, resting his head against the Alpha's shoulder. His hands hovered over the child, trembling with a mixture of fear and awe. "Kael, you made it," Lyran whispered, voice breaking. "We made it," Kael corrected, his lips brushing Lyran's hair. "All three of us." The moon rose high, its silver light spilling through the broken windows. It crowned them, father, mother, and the forbidden heir, casting the faint glow of destiny over the trio. The mark on Lyran's neck glimmered faintly, a bond that could never be undone, a symbol of love the kingdom had tried to destroy. Kael knelt, cradling the child against his chest, golden eyes misted with emotion. "You're ours," he murmured. "No one can take you. No law, no throne, nothing." Lyran smiled through tears, finally allowing himself to rest against Kael's side. "Our love, it survived." Outside, the kingdom reeled from the rebellion, from the power of the Alpha who defied a crown and the Omega who bore his child. Rumors of the heir spread, whispers of prophecy and forbidden love. But inside the chamber, none of that mattered. For in that moment, all that mattered was them, their family, their bond, and the child who would unite Alphas and Omegas for generations to come. Kael lifted his gaze to the moonlit sky, voice steady and commanding despite exhaustion. "A new era begins tonight." Lyran placed his hand over Kael's, feeling the warmth of life and love radiate through them. Their hearts beat as one, strong and unbroken, ready to face whatever world awaited them. And under the silver light of the moon, the Alpha's heir slept peacefully, the first spark of hope in a kingdom that would never forget the night love conquered all.